Lincoln and Kennedy. The presidential mirror. Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy are two of America's most famous presidents, but their lives share a series of shocking coincidences that seem impossible. Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. Kennedy was elected in 1946. Lincoln became president in 1860. Kennedy in 1960. Both were deeply involved in civil rights. The coincidences get even stranger. Both were shot in the head on a Friday while sitting next to their wives. Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater. Kennedy was shot while riding in a car made by the Ford company called a Lincoln. Both were succeeded by men named Johnson, Andrew Johnson, and Lyndon B. Johnson. It feels as if history repeated itself exactly 100 years later, leaving people wondering if it was just luck or something more mysterious. The Titanic and the book The Wreck of the Titan. In 1898, an author named Morgan Robertson wrote a book called The Wreck of the Titan. The story was about a massive unsinkable luxury ship that hits an iceberg and sinks in the North Atlantic, killing many people because there weren't enough lifeboats. This sounds exactly like the Titanic, right? The incredible thing is that the book was written 14 years before the Titanic ever sailed. In the book, the ship was named the Titan. It was roughly the same size as the Titanic, hit the iceberg in the same month, April, and was moving at the same speed. It is one of the most chilling predictions in history, even though Robertson claimed he just knew a lot about ships and speed. Violet Jessop. Miss Unsinkable. Violet Jessop was a nurse and stewardess who had a very unlucky, or perhaps very lucky, career at sea. She was on board the RMS Olympic, the Titanic's sister ship, when it collided with a warship in 1911. Both ships were damaged, but she survived. A year later, she joined the crew of the Titanic when it hit the iceberg and sank. She was placed in a lifeboat and survived again, but her story doesn't end there. During World War I, she was working on the Britannic, the third sister ship, when it hit a sea mine and exploded. Even though she was nearly pulled into the ship's propellers, she jumped into the water and survived a third time. After surviving 3 massive ship disasters, she earned the nickname Miss Unsinkable and lived to be 83 years old. Mark Twain and Halley's Comet. The famous American writer Mark Twain was born in 1835. That year, Halley's Comet, a famous comet that only visits Earth once every 76 years, was visible in the sky. In 1909, Twain famously said, "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it." Twain believed it would be the greatest disappointment of his life if he didn't die when the comet returned. Amazingly, his prediction came true. He died of a heart attack on April 21, 1910, just one day after the comet reached its brightest point in the sky. He arrived and departed with the stars, just as he had promised. The Two Brothers and the Taxi. In 1974, a young man was riding a moped in Bermuda when he was tragically hit and killed by a taxi. 1 year later, his brother was riding the same moped on the very same street. In an impossible twist of fate, he was also hit and killed by a taxi. But here is the truly insane part. It was the same taxi driver, carrying the same passenger, who hit both brothers exactly 1 year apart. The odds of this happening are so small that it is often cited as one of the most statistically impossible coincidences ever recorded. It was a tragic loop in time that the family could never have imagined. Enzo Ferrari and Mesut Özil. Enzo Ferrari, the founder of the famous Italian car company, died on August 14, 1988. Just 2 months later, on October 15, 1988, a famous German footballer named Mesut Özil was born. When you look at photos of the two men, the resemblance is terrifying. They look like identical twins, from the shape of their eyes to their noses and facial structures. They are almost the same person. Some people online joke that Özil is a reincarnation of Ferrari. While there is no scientific explanation for why two unrelated people would look so similar across generations, The photos remain a viral sensation because of the glitch in the Matrix feel. The first and last soldiers of WWI World War I was a long and terrible conflict. The first British soldier to die in the war was 17-year-old John Parr, killed in August 1914. The last British soldier to die was George Ellison, killed on November 11, 1918, just 90 minutes before the war officially ended. The military didn't plan this, but the two soldiers are buried in the same cemetery in Belgium, facing each other. Their graves are separated by only 6 meters, about 20 feet. The first man to fall and the last man to fall are forever linked in the same quiet field, marking the beginning and the end of one of history's greatest tragedies. Richard Parker, The Boy in the Boat, in 1838. Edgar Allan Poe wrote a story called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. In the book, 4 sailors are trapped on a boat after a shipwreck. To survive, they kill and eat a cabin boy named Richard Parker. In 1884 to 46 years later, a real ship called the Mignonette sank. 4 survivors were trapped in a lifeboat. Just like in the story, they eventually decided they had to eat one person to live. The person they chose, a 17-year-old cabin boy whose real name was Richard Parker. Poe had managed to predict the exact name and fate of a boy nearly half a century before it happened. Robert Todd Lincoln and Edwin Booth. Robert Todd Lincoln, the son of President Abraham Lincoln, was once saved from a dangerous accident. He was standing on a train platform in New Jersey when he slipped and started to fall into the path of a moving train. A man quickly grabbed him by his coat and pulled him back to safety. Robert recognized the man immediately. It was the famous actor Edwin Booth. Robert thanked him for saving his life. What makes this a dark and twisted coincidence is that just a few months later, Edwin's brother, John Wilkes Booth, would assassinate Robert's father, President Lincoln. One brother saved the Lincoln family, while the other brother destroyed it. The poker game and the extra $600. In 1858, a man named Robert Fallon was playing a high-stakes poker game in San Francisco. He was accused of cheating and was shot and killed by the other players. No one wanted to take his unlucky seat, but eventually, they found a new player to take his place. The new player turned the $200 Fallon left behind into $800. When the police arrived to investigate the murder, they demanded the original $200 be given to Fallon's next of kin. They discovered that the new player, who had just won all that money, was actually Fallon's son, who hadn't seen his father in 7 years. He had unknowingly taken his father's seat and won his father's money back on the night he died. Anthony Hopkins, and the Lost Book actor Anthony Hopkins, was once cast in a movie called The Girl from Petrovka. He wanted to read the original book to prepare for the role, but he couldn't find a copy anywhere in London. One day, while waiting at a train station, he found a lost book sitting on a bench. He picked it up and was shocked to see it was a copy of The Girl from Petrovka. It gets better. Later, he met the author of the book, George Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer told Hopkins that he didn't even have a copy of his own book anymore because he had lent his last one to a friend who lost it at a train station. Hopkins showed him the book he found. It was the exact same copy, complete with the author's personal notes in the margins. Stephen Hawking and the numbers of science. Stephen Hawking was one of the greatest scientists of our time, and his life was perfectly balanced by scientific dates. He was born on January 8, 1942, exactly 300 years after the death of the famous astronomer Galileo Galilei. Hawking died on March 14, 2018. In the world of science, March 14th is Pi Day 3.14. But that's not all. March 14th is also the birthday of the most famous scientist in history, Albert Einstein. Hawking managed to connect the lives of the 3 greatest scientific minds through his birth and death dates, almost as if the universe was honoring his genius. Subscribe to the channel and